Hey, you want to watch some anime? Some more anime? Some more Frieren? I need to watch some more Frieren. So, hello. The first episode blindsided me a little bit because I didn't realize it was made as like a 2-hour movie and therefore with a much higher animation budget than you would normally expect for seasonal anime. That bamboozled me a little bit, so much so that I was a little bit distracted from actually paying attention to the story. Still, though, compelling premise for Frieren, isn't it? Like this attempt of using a fantasy framework for exploring just the brevity of life and the importance of being present and paying attention to things. Curious. But anyway, let's watch episode 2 of it, which is still going to be made out of footage from the 2-hour movie, one assumes. And the way it works on this channel is that we are doing a watch-along, which is to say we are watching the same episode at the same time. There's a timer in the top left of the screen telling you where we are in the episode, and every time I pause the episode in order to say something, you will get a lovely little screenshot hanging out here. And when I unpause, there, you'll get that little visual anime key art, and then I'll pause again, and then we'll come back to it. So, we're going to scroll the timer all the way back to 0000. I'm going to give you a countdown, 3, 2, 1, play, and we're both going to play. Every once in a while, I'm going to have something to say that's going to require me to pause so that the episode doesn't just kind of run ahead of us. And I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, pause. You're going to pause. I'm going to talk. I'm going to finish talking, and then I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, unpause. And in that way, we try and keep in sync with one another and watch the episode of the anime at the same time. So, yeah, I think that's all the instructions anyone needs. Thank you for paying attention. I was just about to do the outro. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Such a reflex habit. But, anyway, episode, Frieren, watch. 3, 2, 1, play. Lovely, lovely blue pencil rendering on that intro. I wonder if it is... I have to imagine that's done digitally, though. Another thing, like I talked extensively about sort of like anime sort of trying to recapture the roughness of analog production, especially in line work, and that's very much on display in Frieren. There's a lot of like the specific line work they use for the characters has a lot of like that analog roughness that kind of went away as digital anime production became the norm for a good while. And I appreciate that a lot. Lovely little split screen effect there between the past and present. That's quite clever. Interesting choice for a theme song, too. An old man contriving a way to pass something on. once again, the way the show handles light. Oof. Very pretty. And once again, we get this time passing in a flash. To the book pile. Ah, the weather changes. A signifier of the internal turmoil she's feeling. Oh, again, I'm like, did they 3D animate those books or did they hand animate it? It looks like hand animation. It looks so good. That too, like the lighting coming down, coming up from above, below, like ooh. They hand animated that staff, I think. God damn it. That weather vane is 3D though. 100 million %. It must be. course he did. Took you a while to catch on, elf lady. I like Heiter. Three, two, one, pause. So, okay. Paused on a fade frame there. I like Heiter. Like I said in the first episode, like his personality and behavior sort of gives a lot away about him if you pay attention, which is that he's this corrupt priest, right? Like he's this drinking, philandering, corrupt, sort of treacherous trickster of a priest guy, right? That's Heiter's whole thing. But constantly there is this sense in him, like when the people at the funeral sort of talking shit about Frieren not showing grief on her face, he immediately jumps in and eats all of the attention by like, hey, I don't have any sad silent, hey, like he does, like he's a class clown, right? Like he's that kind of person, someone who, yeah, like is a bit of a fuck up and like has vices and problems, but who's driven by this deep, intense desire to be and do good, right? Like even in spite of everything that's wrong with him, which is the thing that he says to Fern there at like when he finds her, is that thing of like he has this surface level idea of himself that I'm just a fuck up, I'm just an old like improper cheater and a liar, and like, yeah, I'm I'm not a good guy. I'm like, but then he gets old and he remembers his friend and how kind and how good he was, and now that his friend isn't in the world anymore, it's like, shit. Like there is that thing of like, shit. Like the excuses run out, and he has to confront that. What he has been doing the whole time and what matters to him is in fact other people, like underneath the layer of selfishness, right? And that's strong characterization. Which is why, like, even until the end, like, okay, Frieren won't take Fern with it. Okay, I have a grimoire with a resurrection spell. Go decipher that, because I'm such a scoundrel, I'm such a coward and a weakling. I don't want to die. Actually, I'm totally not okay with that. Even though he clearly was resigned to death earlier, right? Like even though he clearly had made quite a bit of peace with it earlier, but like he engages that scoundrel lying reflex, but it's always in service of someone else, right? It's always in service of taking the heat and pressure off of someone else, right? And that's a character, right? Like that's a specific kind of like I've met this guy. I've been that kind of person sometimes. Like when you sort of get into a particularly negative image of yourself, like that's a kind of person that it's easy to fall into being. So like Heiter, well observed character, I think. Interesting. Good. But yeah. 3, 2, 1, play. The things we leave behind. The things we leave to others. Which is the other thing about death, right? It's how you keep someone alive in your heart. Bring the spirit forward. God, that's pretty. Holy fuck. Just the watercolor backgrounds they've got going. Presumably digitally created, I'm sure, but 26 years after the death of Himmel the Hero, the Turk region in the Central Lands. Oh, hey. Oh, the animation on that thing coming out of the fire. Good character. I just the little casual summoning the staff animation. Oh, Oh, nice use of the flowers. You notice that? Like the same way that Himmel's memory is dying out among the villagers. The flowers are dying out. Please don't steal squirrels. Yeah, the little flex on that animation of twisting the leaf. Animator flexing. Oh, giant turtle. Oh, it's pretty. But the world building here is fantastic, right? That's the other thing. Like, I've spoken about like my annoyances with isekai, right? In your typical in your typical isekai, magic as it exists is like, oh yeah, fireball, blast things with devil burning super ray, extreme power, whatever. Um, I really like that this show, before it shows us any kind of cool like battle magic, whatever, is taking quite a bit of time to establish like magic not just as Frieren's power, but her interest, right? Like something that she cares about. You are young, yes. Not for nothing, but we all spend our lives searching for things that don't exist. How many years is soon? Yeah. Like, yeah, they have a little spell that can be used for tracking small animals. Cool! Magic isn't just her superpower, it's her craft. It's what she cares about. It's like a thing that matters to her beyond just making her strong. And that as characterization is really good. Because she's very autistic. Or at least autistic coded. Oh, boyfriends. Blue petal. My. This is true, by the way. Like, squirrels. Squirrels do the same thing. It's an important part of the life cycles of a lot of plants. You choose it, yes. That's, by the way, that's a good point about passion. We choose our passion. I fucking love the mood of this show so far. The introspection and reflectiveness of it is a genuine delight. And it's also, like, I am feeling, like, not weepy, but I'm feeling emotional. Because I have lost people, myself. And, like, I feel like the show comes from an understanding of of the complicated feelings that conjures, And, like, the ways that we try to keep our loved ones alive beyond their actual life, right? And just in terms of the way that the story draws that parallel, that, like, the flowers, like, and this, like, that's also a character design thing, right? Like, like that Himmel is defined by this blue hair color that he's got very much, which is like part of the thing of when he shows up as an old man, that he's lost the blue hair color. That's like, oh shit, that's kind of startling. And it's a signifier that he's, closing in on death. Like, so that the blue color is sort of that he shares between the hair and the flowers is like this symbol and signifier of him and his presence, right? His energy, his spirit, whatever. And the villagers have forgotten about the statue, and the flowers, totally by coincidence, also haven't been seen in this region for 20 years, right? And I think it's making a point about, like, searching is the point, right? Like, that going out and looking for these things is meaningful in and of itself, right? Which is the thing that Frieren is sort of struggling a little bit to understand, is that, like, like, doing something just to keep the parts of your loved ones that matter alive in the world, like, that's meaningful. And Frieren has to give, like, where Frieren has to give is like, but, like, you can't make other people's lives about that, right? Like, Frieren never met Himmel, right? So he doesn't matter that much to her. And that's, like, again, navigating those things of, like she feels she has a duty to her dead friend, but also she has a duty to her now child, essentially. Sibling, maybe more of a older sister, little sister relationship. And that's something that you have to navigate with grief as well. Like, what do you owe to the dead, and what do you owe to the living? That's not always an easy fucking thing to navigate, let me tell you. That's not always easy at all. And Frieren feels like a show that understands that. I wonder if, like, because I know that eventually they're going to be fighting demons and shit, right? I know eventually so, like, I wonder if the style and tone of the show switches more towards action. Like, if what the show explores, like, switches a little bit more towards a typical adventure story as time goes on, which I would understand completely, because it's like, there's only so much time you can spend in this mind space. And it would, like, in terms of, like, just for the sake of variety, of not being sort of melancholy and morose all the time, probably a good idea to have some hype action shit as well. But I wonder about that. Like, I wonder if the show's gonna stay on this very specific thing about, like, navigating, like, what do we owe to the dead? Like, how do we keep those we love who have passed on alive in ourselves and in the world, like that? Because that's really meaty thematic territory, and not the kind of thing that a lot of seasonal anime explores. So that's interesting. That's interesting. There were I did not become quite so deranged by this episode and, like, the animation quality, but the animation quality was just, like, universally high. There were times, like, because now I know how it was produced, I'm less inclined to freak out. But and also this episode was kind of subtler. For example, the bit with the pumpkins, right? The rat here, or the seed squirrel, is like, that's not massively complex creature animation, right? Like, that one's animated relatively simply. You can see the stylization on the form is, like, very simple. It's not really doesn't really have, like, the shape and volume of, like, a real animal would. But the pumpkins flying around, right? And it's such a quiet thing. It's a quiet thing to feel that is impressive, but the pumpkins are flying around, and they're not just, like, the easy way to do that would be to have a PNG of a pumpkin, and then you just, like, make that go up and make it go sideways, and then you make it go down while like, making it larger or shrinking it, right? Like, that's the easy way, like, for an object to hover. And in plenty of animation, like, when you need an object to hover, it's just, we just take the object and then we, like, move it across the screen. we don't necessarily animate the full three-dimensionality of the damn thing as it moves, that's the thing about this shot that's kind of impressive, is that they do. As the pumpkin begins to hover here, right, you can see like it doesn't just raise off the ground, it does these little motions and rotations as the video feed output corrupts on my player. And the same thing with the pumpkin in the background, like it doesn't just float up into the air, it begins to rotate its way up into the air. And as they're like dumping them into the thing there, they're like, the animators are rotating these goddamn pumpkins in three-dimensional space. Like they're not just being raised and lowered, they're tumbling over themselves weightlessly in the air. And it adds, it's such a small thing, it doesn't matter, but it adds so much to that sense of, oh shit, these things are being like weightlessly levitated by magic. And interestingly, this is a small thing, but if you pay attention to the motions that Frieren and Fern are doing as they're levitating them, they're making these like rotating motions with their staffs in the air, right? Like they're waving their staffs round and around. And that mimics the motion that the pumpkins are doing, right? Like the pumpkins are tumbling over themselves in the air, and there's this symmetry of motion between like the circular motions that the mages are doing, so you get that intuitive sense of, oh, okay, that motion is influencing that. It's good animation craft is what I'm trying to say. It's just good craft. And I didn't want to stop the episode and ramble on about it for 5 minutes, but in the middle of it, but it was just real good. Also, I'm such a sucker for scenes like this where light is used that way. Like light from a glowing pool from below, like highlighting characters. In part because when light comes from below, the way that you use shadowing and shadows and highlight has to change a little bit about the characters. And that is, in some anime, that can kind of be the thing that reveals that, oh, okay, the animators don't quite understand how this character is put together three-dimensionally from every angle, because they're used to drawing them with light, like highlights from above. But then when it comes from below, it's like things look a little bit weird and off. They don't here. This is just a little thing that I love. Like, this is so, and again, I'm calling it the 90s vibe. It's also an 80s vibe. Like it's more, I should probably call it analog vibe that the show has, like with the blurring on the line work and the way that like light colors bleed, and also just the palette choices, the color palette choices. Like there is a certain, let me actually find it in the intro. There is a shot in the intro. Not there, but there, here, this. That slightly reddish, pinkish haze that lays over the shot here, right? Like that. That is very much like a analog anime artifact. And it comes there, and especially this thing, like the way that the highlights are drawn on the staff and the crystal here, like that is pure Sailor Moon. Like that's pure that era of anime, in terms of how the aesthetic is rendered on the thing. By the way, who's the character in the reflection there? Because that's a fancy dress, and that doesn't look like something Frieren would wear. And the same thing with the way, like you see the glow coming off, and also you notice that the color here, like we are in a black void, right? But none of the void is actually ever fully pure black. That's the other thing. Like when I talk about color palette, pure black as a color, even in the line work, even in the deepest shadows, even in like the darkest scenes in the show, there really isn't any. There has not been any pure black, any pure dark. Pretty much, I don't even think there was in the flashback scene when the girl closes her, like when this thing is stepping out of the fire, right? You might think that because it's a dark shadow that's looming out of the dark, you might think that would be, they'd use black for that because that charred black by, nope, that's brown. And when she closes her eyes, even, in order to sort of block out what the monster is about to do to her, there. No, wait, that's not even pure black, is it? It might be pure black. I'm not 100% sure if it's pure black. But, oh, you can actually see the filter being applied, I think. But then it goes away again. As the, oh god, as the glow and shit gets, color choices and the way that this show handles its aesthetics. My point is, it's all really interesting and good. I haven't fully parsed all of it out yet. Like it's not like I'm sitting here with a Wikipedia in my head and I know everything about how the show was produced, but I'm parsing it out in real time and you get to listen to it because you clicked on this video and now you're trapped forever. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, right. Good episode. Let's watch the next one. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go record that. And bye.